was created by Obaeware the First Ogidigan, of course, who reigned between the year 1440 to 1473. That is a period of about 33 years. Uh, by uh, hierarchy, Obaeware the First is the 44th Oba or king of Benin across the two dynasties, or the 13th Oba in the second dynasty. Of course, before I go further, I would like, before I go further in explaining the origin of a Eaiken, the history behind it, I'll first of all give a sort of a background knowledge to the proud listeners of Benin history and culture. Of course, we all know that there is an interregnum between the first dynasty and the second dynasty. And in the first, in the second dynasty, the the first Oba of Benin was called Oromia, and a lot of Benins do regard him as Oba Odolore. Um, a lot of Benin historians, prior before now, refer to him as Oba Odolore, or popularly called Oromian. The Oromian had a son, which is regarded the Benin book as history remembered as Obaeweka the first, who is a proud grandson of a Caladeran. All right, and the Obaeweka the second had two sons, Uwaihwaen and Ehemie. The Uwaihwaen had no son, Uwaihwaen being the first surviving son of Obaeweka the first, because Benin, it is an act of express primogeniture, the passage of one's right from the present holder to the first surviving son. So, of course, the primogeniture act of Benin started from the first king of Benin, Ogiso Igodo, of course. So that act was maintained across the two dynasties. So Uwaihwaen, who is the third Oba in the second dynasty, had no son. So, but he had a daughter. History remembered her to be Princess Imadeyo. Now, take note, Princess Imadeyo, she's different from Princess Ideleyo. Princess Ideleyo was the daughter. She's a very popular princess in the history of Benin. She was one of the daughters of Obaiwai the Great, she almost became Oba of Benin with the circumstances that prevailed. But being that that's not the reason for this history, so I don't want to digress from um, what I was asked to profile or to narrate. So Wahwai and Oba Wahwai had just a daughter, Princess Imadeo. That Princess Imadeo had a son, Prince Eligbe. Alright, Eligbe, Prince Eligbe. Now, but because Wahwai was a direct son of Eweka the First, who was a direct son of Oromia, um, the daughter could not become the Oba. Instead, his son, who was now maternally connected to the Oba line, wanted to become the Oba. One way or the other, he was the Benin chiefs disallowed him by subjecting him to some test, which he would have passed, but for reasons best known to the Benin chiefs, they realized that you cannot carry the the female gene of of a paternal line to gain entrance. You have to be a direct line you have to be paternally related to the Oba line, to the Obaship, to the royalty before you can be granted the access. And that Prince Elegbe was only maternally related to royalty. So instead, Uwakwan was the grandfather of that Prince Elegbe, was favored. His name was Ehemien. Ehemien was a younger brother to Oba Owaihuaen. So he now became Oba, and the Benins remembered him to be Oba Ehemien. So Oba Ehemien gave birth to Oba Ewedo. Then Oba Ewedo gave birth to Oba Ogwola. Oba Ogwola had two sons. Had three sons, not two sons. Had three sons. Edoni, who became an Oba. Second, Udagbedo, who became an Oba. And third, Ohen, who became an Oba. Ohen had four sons who also became Obas. The first was Egbeka, who is the 10th Oba of Benin. The second is Ohobiru, Ohobihu, all right, who also became an Oba. Then, the next was supposed to be Ey the Great, but for some political skirmishes in the palace, Uwaifiokun, who was a younger brother to Prince Ogun, who eventually became Oba Ey the First, became Oba first before his elder brother, who was Ey. But from the intricacies, Oba Ey or Prince Ogun was able to reclaim the throne of his fathers from his younger brother. So he now became Oba Ey, the 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 first, who is the 13th Oba across the two dynasties, is the 44th Oba. Now, after Oba Ey became the Oba, of course, is a king who eventually had to expand Benin Kingdom into Benin Empire. He dug moats, he brought civilization to Benin people, and he revived because he came through a process where there was political instability in the kingdom. So he had to make the Benin Empire or Benin Kingdom, as he inherited, very stable. So in conquest of that, of course, he fought a lot of wars, and of course, the Benins never lost any war to anybody except to the British in 1897. So one is expected that every war that was fought at that time of Obaiwari was roundedly won. And of course, we fought wars with a lot of Yoruba people, and none of them ever defeated us. In one of the war, there was a man popularly called Eaiken. He was like the overlord of a place now we now called Uselu. It was like the overlord of that area. It was the overlord of that area because that word Uselu had not existed until the uh, grandfather, great, until the great grandson of Obaiwari became the Oba, which was Esigi. The great grandson of Obaiwari was Oba Esigi. So the word Uselu had not existed at that time, but the area we now call Uselu was where Eaiken presided, had his household stationed. So Eaiken was a powerful man, envied by all. He was a man with so much worth. He was a man with so much dexterity. He was loved by everybody. So Obaiwai the first also loved him. So he was a man who wanted to prove that beyond his worth, beyond the what he has attained in life, he wanted to also be recognized as a warrior in the canons of history of the Benin people. Of course, the major reason we're not talking about the history of the Eaiken is because he eventually became a warrior because he was an outstanding man. So the attribute of being outstanding in one's time, it's most important because if he wasn't outstanding, you and I wouldn't be talking about him today. This is an event that happened almost 600 or over 600 years ago, and we're still talking about it. That means it became a very astounding personality. He served his Oba diligently until there was a time the Oba wanted to test the might of his loyal servant, of course, or loyal noble. Eaiken was a noble though because he was a powerful man and well respected in the society. So there were some recalcitrant Owo or Ogo. You know, the Benins regard them to as Ogo people because we discover they are very respectful. Where we're not called Owo. Owo is in present day Ondo state. So there was some recalcitrant The Owo people became recalcitrant to the imperialism of the Oba of Benin. So Oba of Benin needed to teach them a very high-handed lesson. So he sent a military troop to to completely vanquish them. So, and the head of that troop was delegated was Eaiken. Eaiken, the brave, that respected personality in the Benin Kingdom, was mandated by His Royal Majesty Obaiwari the Great as the first to go on that war voyage. So, of course, before he left, before he left, he therefore now asked Obaiwari to take care of his household on his behalf, pending on when he returns from that war. So he asked Obaiwari that please take care of my household before I return from my war voyage against the Owo people. So instead, Obaiwari sent his first surviving son, the first surviving son, which was Kwoboyuwa. The Benins remembered him to be Kwoboyuwa. Now, he sent his first surviving son, Kwoboyuwa, to go and take care of the household of Eaiken, who is now in present day Uselu. Because I had said before now that at the time of Eaiken, the word Uselu had not existed because it was during Obaisige where he went to hide his mother, Queen Idia, and then the Benin chiefs were able to catch or to locate where Obaisige hid his mother, and the event, the Benin's now called it Oyesunu. Oyesunu, it still happened, and it was now corrupted to Uselu. The real word was Oyesunu, which is now corrupted. That happened about over 100 years later, or 150 years later, after the event of Eaiken. So there is no way that place was called Uselu, but it was the area of the present day Uselu that Eaiken had his family. So Obaiwari sent his first surviving son, Kwoboyuwa, to go and look after the household of Eaiken. Now, by that instant, he became an Edayi, that the holder of Eaiken's family. That's what the Benin. If you hold something in trust of another person, the Benin refer to that person as Edayi. Abime Edaye Nogi. I'm Edayi Odionwe. So when you hold something in trust for another, for the real owner, you are the Edayi to that person. So he became Edayi. Koboyuwa was not the Edayiken. He was holding the household of Eaiken on behalf of Eaiken because Eaiken was far away. He had traveled to a war for that war conquest. Of course, that Edayiken became abridged as Edaiken. It's supposed to be Edaiken. It's not Edaiken. Alright, so that's where the word Edaiken came from. Of course, remember that it was the first surviving son, alright, of the Obaiwari the first, that became Edaiken. So that makes the practice of the first surviving son of every Oba of Benin being regarded as Edaiken, which herein means the crown prince, which herein means the crown prince. So Eaiken actually went to the Owo War, fought that war, and won. The Owo people were defeated as expected. Were defeated as expected. So he had to give a standing order for his troop to return back to Benin, while he tarried a little longer in the territory of the defeated Owo people. So during the night, the Owo people, the few remaining escapee, were able to recoup and killed Eaiken and killed Eaiken. So Eaiken never returned from that war. So it was not ascribed. The Benin now have a parable for that event. Eaiken no gwoko no magule. Eaiken no gwoko no magule. Translated, Eaiken, who is a master of war front, of war, but who does not know when to run, when to run, or when the chips are done, when you need to escape. So that's why the Benin now say Eaiken no Goko no Magule. All right. So eventually Koboyuwa, the first son of Obaiwari the first, became the first Eaiken of Uselu. All right. A Eaiken of that territory, because it was later on that the word Uselu came forth from, or Yesunu came forth from. All right. So it is not customary that every Oba of Benin, before he becomes the Oba, as the Eaiken, must hold fort at Uselu, almost in the axis of Eaiken's household. All right. Must stay there before he becomes the Oba of Benin. Every Oba must become an Eaiken at Uselu before he becomes the Oba of Benin. Although there is one exception. There is one exception to that history. The historians remember that Oba Voramen did not go to Uselu. All right, did not go to Uselu. Was a Eaiken at Urubi. Now, Prince Idugbowa, who later became Oba Voramen Ogbaisi, mother's uncle, all right, was an Ero. An Ero is a custodian of Urubi. So that's where he became a Eaiken, and from there, that's where he went on the coronation journey to Benin. So Oba Voramen is regarded, or Prince Idugbowa became Oba Voramen, is regarded as the only Eaiken who did not stay at Uselu. But customarily, from that event of what happened during Obaiwari the first, sending his first surviving son Koboyuwa to take care of the household of Eaiken as a Eaiken, it becomes a customary practice for the Oba. For before you become the Oba of Benin, you must first of all become a Eaiken of Uselu. All right, the Benins tends to make customary definition of a particular event to become symbolic. Another very good example was during the traverse of Prince Ogun, the same Obaiwari the first. He climbed a palm tree. That palm tree was like where he was taking palm fronds from, because he has to feed on fruits. So that's where he was taking palm frond from, that sustained him from all through his travel during that region of the present day part of Uselu. So he was always climbing that palm tree to pick palm frond from to eat at that time. So when he now became the Oba, now became customary that to every Oba must climb that palm tree. That palm tree has stayed there for over 600 years. Even before Obaiwari became the Oba, the palm tree was already there. So the palm tree is still there. The Benins refer to that palm tree as Udin, Ore, Amamieson, Amiwa. It's a symbolic palm tree because a man who do not suffer, Amamieson, Amiwa, will not stumble into worth. If you don't suffer, you don't become worthy.